What is autistic stimming and how does it impact autistic people and their overall well-being? Well, that is what we're going to find out. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Aspergian Journal. Autistic stimming is an act of displaying self-stimulating behaviours that autistic people do as a natural and often essential part of their day-to-day living, and when dealing with influences of the outside world and that overwhelms them, and they try to navigate the thoughts and emotions that come with it in their own way. And they use these stimming behaviours and that to be able to cope with those stressful situations. A lot of these stimming behaviours might be seen as repetitive actions, sounds and movements that neurotypical people might see as weird or awkward to them. But to autistic people, stimming supports them in regulating their emotions, processing sensory inputs, and maintaining a physical and mental clarity and balance of their emotions and thoughts. And that when dealing with an overwhelming and chaotic world that is out of their control, but they have to garner a way of being able to control their own responses to it. Stimming is another major cornerstone of the autistic spectrum, as every autistic person that I've come across in my life has a stimming behaviour or habit of some nature, even if they are aware of it or not. Stimming is usually seen more prevalently in children more than adults, as children are going through that natural developmental stages of their lives, where adults often have to learn how to manage their lives, and they have to cope with their autistic traits without much help or support as they get older. And what you do usually find is that adults are usually very good at hiding or masking their autistic traits or stimming behaviours out of fear of rejection, judgment, or misunderstandings from other people, as they might not have the knowledge, the understanding, or the compassion, and that autistic people have to have stimming behaviours to be able to cope with regulating their emotions and thoughts effectively. And it's not a harmless thing to an autistic person, but to a neurotypical person, they might find it out of the ordinary. And usually they're not willing to learn and listen from other autistic people so they can make the world that little bit more better and more understandable, and that for autistic people to feel accepted in society as they deal with their day-to-day living as an autistic person, but also coming to terms with what comes with their autism. In essence, stimming behaviours are usually a sign of when an autistic person is either in a state of enjoyment and contentment for the visual thoughts and that they've got going on in their minds at any given time, but on the flip side to that, there might be certain behaviours and that might see be seen as an emotional or mental distress that's going on in their minds at any time, and they might be using physical movements of their bodies to convey the emotions and thoughts and that they might have at any given time. This is very common for some autistics who maybe struggle to verbalise what their emotions and thoughts are, and they use stimming or other physical behaviours to be able to convey their inner messages and that to other people. But if other people don't understand why they're doing it and what they're trying to convey, then it causes confusion, and then it just causes more frustration for the autistic person, because they might struggle to express them in the way that they would like to, but all they face is misjudgment and confusion and lack of understanding and compassion from the other person if they are willing to learn and be considerate in that autistic person's efforts of what they're trying to put across to other people. Stimming behaviours for autistic adults and children might manifest itself in various physical and mental ways, like self-regulation, sensory processing, expression of joy and excitement, and also focus and attention. Many of these consist of where an autistic person might use stimming and that to be able to cope with their anxiety or stress levels, especially if their sensory overload and that gets too much, where it leads to a meltdown. And if it's left unchecked or not monitored carefully, it can have a detrimental effect on their overall well-being. A good example might be where a person might be rocking or hand flapping and that to provide comfort and a sense of safety when they're in a stressful or uncertain environments or situations, and that where it's elevating their anxiety and stress levels in. But on the flip side to that, if they were acting out a certain behaviour, like where it was causing them real harm, like that banging their head against the wall, or they were doing something to their skin that's bringing it out into a rash or causing, or it can lead to infection, then that is a very dangerous habit and that for them to do. And really it's about changing something that's having a big impact on their health for something that is that's more healthier to do. But also with coping and that with stressful situations, and that autistic people might do stimming behaviours and to show when they have like enjoyment or excitement for something, like if they're watching one of their favourite films or participating in an activity and that brings them enjoyment, and they just feel so excited about it that they have to express it in a physical way. But it could also be a way of increasing someone's focus and attention for a certain activity or a task and that they are doing, and it helps them to keep focus on that particular thing, and it stops them from deviating or getting sidetracked and that by something else, and that's taken them away from the activity or task and that they're participating in at that given time. As I've also added, they might do stimming behaviours and that to be able to cope with when they're in certain periods of anxiety, and where they might do it and that to distract their mind from from the thoughts or intrusive thoughts that are going through their minds at any given time that is causing them the distress in the first place. Stimming in that can be anything from flapping one's hands or messing around with a certain object in their hands. Like for me, I always like to have a pen or a pencil in my hand, and that when I'm doing my work, because it just helps me concentrate. But it's also a tool that helps me engage with my creativity in my mind to basically explore my creativity even further. And also as a handy tip, and that if I need to write something, at least I've got a pen on hand. How many times and that have we want to write something down and I think, oh God, I can't find a pen. Growing up as an autistic person, my stimming behaviours and that really varied, and that as time went on and as I got older and I was developing my own mind and my own thoughts and feelings. I mean, hand flapping, like I've mentioned, and that is one of the most common stimming behaviours that autistic children will do, and that from an early age. And I did that to a certain degree. But as you get older, it just disappears, or it manifests itself into newer behaviours or habits that can stay with someone and that throughout their life as they get into an adulthood and even beyond. As well as being always wanting a pen in my hand, and as part of my stimming behaviours, another distinctive habit that I do have is the ability to talk to myself like I'm talking to another person in the room, even though they're not there. Now, I haven't got schizophrenia where like there's voices going on in my head or having delusions or anything like that. From a young age, as I've had to deal with like loneliness and not having a lot of friends around, and that growing up and even getting into adulthood, sometimes I've had to, create a way of how to regulate my thoughts and emotions when I haven't really got a big support group of peers around me. And what really started off as a mild case of like achalalia, where you're just repeating words being used by other people as part of your speech and development, because I was a bit of a late developer with my speech, and I think just by talking to myself, and that was one of my ways of being able to build my communication skills and hopefully my socialisation skills as I got older. But as I've mentioned many a times in other videos, socialisation is not something that comes easy to autistic people, myself included, and that can be a challenge in itself and a hurdle to overcome. That there's no quick easy answer to it. Sometimes one autistic person will find their way to get better at socialising than others. And even though I've got better with communicating with other people and hopefully to be able to socialise with people, but I still, let's just say I'll never be the life and soul of a party. And it's always going to be a negative for my autism, but it is one that I still continue to develop even as of today and as I move forward into the future. But what started off as a mild case of achalalia turned into a lifelong paraphilalia, where one talks to themselves using their own words, and it's like it's got to a point where I can hold conversations with myself like I'm talking to another person, but even though there's no one else in the room. So it might be something that's quite mild, but I think it's a skill that I've just developed, and that from repeated practice as I've got older. I don't think that was ever my intentions. I think it's just been my way to be able to cope with not having a lot of friends in my life, and and dealing with the loneliness and that, which can be an epidemic and that for a lot of autistic people. Because sometimes we do struggle to make and maintain friendships with other people, and that can be a challenge, and that there's just no easy answer for. Now, when it comes to talking to myself, I do control what I do talk about, and the volume of my speech. I do have control of that. It's just the reflex habit of doing it, and that is something that I have to do. And it's just got to a point where it doesn't feel unreal to me, or it doesn't feel unnatural. It's just something that becomes like second nature to a person. And for me, it just helps me regulate my emotions and thoughts better, which I think, as a result, it's a positive thing for me, as it would as any other stimming behaviour, as long as it's a safe one, can be a benefit to other autistic people. When it comes to determine, what kind of stimming behaviours or habits are safe or not, it's about having a balance between which ones are safe and which ones that could be harmful, and that for a person where they could be putting themselves in harm's way. Now, it does come back to the notion that autism can be your gift and your curse. The love and hate relationship that we have with ourselves with autism, because there's maybe certain things that we do like about our autism, but then there's other things and that can hold us back, and we wish that we could deal with things more better. And that's what I really advocate for in all my videos, is to really have a balanced relationship with improving on certain parts of your autism that can help you elevate yourself as a human being to be able to cope with day-to-day struggles better and more confidently, but never forget who you are as a person, and don't change yourself entirely and act to suit other people. It has to benefit you and you only. So what are the positives and the negatives of autistic stimming? The positive impacts of autistic stimming can be emotional release, which provides a safe outlet for autistic people to process and express their feelings and thoughts, especially if they struggle to verbalise them with other people. It provides comfort and safety, so it gives autistic people the familiarity and predictability at times when the world doesn't always make sense to them, and dealing with environments that are uncomfortable or overwhelming. It can give identity and authenticity to an autistic person, as stimming is a natural and beautiful way of autistic self-expression, which is something that can't be cured or be erased. It is part of our autistic identity and nature, and we have to embrace it and to ensure that it works with us rather than against us. It can also create this flow of creativity. So as autistic people, we like our routines and habits, and that gives us that predictability, that comfort. but also it can give us that drive towards creating new things, those sparks, and that can trigger our innovative thinking and cultivate a state of focus and enjoyment on the things that matter to us, and it propels us forward and up to where we want to go in the future. On the other hand, there are negative impacts of autistic stimming, and those can be social stigma. Autistic people can be stigmatised by neurotypical people for their quirky stimming habits by saying that they're strange or weird, which can lead to judgment, bullying, and pressure to try and suppress it, or in an autistic person's case, trying to mask it. The amount of times that I've heard people call autistic people weirdo or any other kind of name, and which basically is just an insult to us autistics when we are trying to navigate the world in our own way, and even though it might not be offensive in terms of the word, but it still causes a detrimental effect to us, because other people are not willing to give us the patience, the reassurance, the guidance, and the compassion that is necessary for us to build our lives effectively and be able to relate to other people. Because autistic people, they do truly desire to get along with neurotypical people, and they want to build friendships and relationships with others. But if the world tries and shuts us out, all you're doing is destroying our efforts and to increase our own development, but also to make the world a better place. So my suggestion would be to all those people who try and bully autistic people is that you are only making matters worse, and you are on the wrong side of history. You could do a really good thing even today by showing support and compassion to an autistic person that might be close to you or who maybe works with you, and to help them to get to a place of where they would like to be. And you'd feel proud in helping that person to get them where they want to be, because then you would have played a more proactive role and been a positive, encouraging influence on that person to where they want to go. So do yourself a favour. Put your prejudice, bias, and unreserved opinions to one side and think about the autistic person that might be in front of you and be in their shoes just for one day, and you'll realise the challenges that person has to go through on a day-to-day basis and has had to do so for many years. Make a positive change today, and you'll play a big role in making this world better. Not just for autistic people, but for neurotypical people as well. Other negative impacts can be forcing autistic people to hide their stimming behaviours and habits, which only leads to more stress, anxiety and burnout, stripping away the coping mechanisms that they rely on so much. It can also lead to physical challenges. As I've mentioned before, stimming behaviours can become physically and mentally harmful to an autistic person, and if safer alternatives are not given, and depending on the nature of those behaviours, therapy intervention might be necessary for that autistic person to overcome those harmful behaviours and to find ones and that are a lot more healthier. Stimming can also be a distraction in terms of it being problematic in terms of getting in the way of how an autistic person lives their lives. You know, stimming behaviour, whatever that it means to an autistic person, it has to complement their life rather than hinder it. With all that said, how does an autistic person build acceptance for their stimming and adopting, more healthier behaviours and habits that nurtures their life rather than hinders it? Well, the first thing you've got to understand is that it's always going to be a valid and meaningful trait that autistic people do to varying degrees, and it's not something that can be fixed, and that because it's always going to be part of an autistic person's life, as long as they're not adopting behaviours that are dangerous or they could be intrusive to that person's life. So you have to be in tune with the person within yourself and ensure that whatever stimming might mean to you, it works with you and not against you, and also do what matters for you and not to satisfy other people's opinions and their biased judgments. Because all you're going to do if you do that by masking your stimming behaviours, you're just going to repeat that vicious cycle that you want to get out of so much. When it comes to overcoming harmful stimming behaviours, you could consider using substitutions like fidget toys that a lot of autistic people that I've seen usually have in their hand to keep their hands busy. Like me using a pen, and using weighted blankets and that in situations when your anxiety is out of control, or using like gym size inflatable balls for those who like to rock their bodies all the time when they're dealing with a sensory overload. And so if you have one of these like gym inflatable balls and you sit on it, you can rock on it. And so it gives you that notion of rocking, but it's done in a safe manner. And when it comes to weighted blankets, I have one of these, and it really helps me to manage my anxiety levels, and that when I know I'm getting heightened anxiety, and it helps me calm down, and that when I'm in those anxious states. Also in the winter, and it keeps you really nice and warm, and that when you're laying on the sofa or sitting in your chair, to the point where you can end up falling asleep in your chair. Another solution is to create and nurture supportive environments that helps autistic people with sensory overloading meltdowns. And these can range from having a room at home that is dedicated for somewhere where an autistic person can chill out, a haven, and that from the outside chaotic elements of the world, and a place where stimming can be encouraged in a safe and non-judgmental manner. So for me, and I think for a lot of men in general, we all like to have a man cave, and that's somewhere where no one else is allowed. And for us, it's our way of being able to, alleviate all the outside influences of the modern world, and just to fixate on the things that we like to enjoy. So, and I think this applies to any autistic person, like if they have a room where they have like the video game consoles, other things, whatever they enjoy, they can take themselves to somewhere where they find that enjoyment and excitement away from the elements and that just brings anxiety and distress. Finally, I would also consider, try keeping and writing a journal to jot down all your thoughts and emotions that you experience at any time when you're acting out your stimming behaviours, as this exercise and that can become an extension of yourself, and it can also help with your anxiety levels and state of mind just by offloading whatever's on your mind, and it just helps to keep your overall well-being at bay. I mean, I use a journal that I jot down a lot of things on, and really it does become an extension of yourself, because it's really helpful keeping a reflective record of all the good things that you have about your autism, which supports you in fostering a more positive mindset and focus on mind on the things that enriches your life. But also it's an opportunity to write whatever things that you might want to improve on, as it becomes an integral part of your journey of personal development. But also it takes away from the outside elements that you've got no control over. You can only control your own responses and outlook to how you deal with situations and environments out there in the outer world that we don't have control over. Now, I've mentioned this in many videos and newsletters that sometimes you have to develop the skills as an autistic person to be able to manage things outside of your control more better, because it makes you a more independent person. Not to neglect who you are, and because it's important to always be to always be in tune with the person of who you are, but to take that person and elevate it to greater heights that works for you and you only. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and if you have, please do subscribe to the Aspergian Journal on YouTube and Substack so you can be kept in the loop for when new content is released. As always, thank you.